I was in full rescue mode, like I would do to any call. Obviously, I was extra hyper vigilant at the time because the magnitude of this, and I was angry. I was angry on my way down and eager to get on that pile and help. I was actually getting an oil change of my troop car, my state police car, in a small garage in upstate New York. And they had a TV going with the news, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and the news came across there was an airplane that hit one of the towers. And my first initial reaction was some small Cessna pilot made a mistake, and it's terrible, but didn't really pay much more attention to it. And, moments later, when the second plane hit,
Not appear that there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
That looks like a second plane.
And it came across, I immediately knew that it was terrorism. Something was totally awry. And I immediately, this is kind of right before cell phones, actually. So we had beepers at the time. And not too long afterwards, my beeper went off. I used the garage landline to call. And we were all deployed to an air base just north of New York City, Stewart Airport, to rally and come up with a plan to, go down and assist with coordination with New York City police and fire. It was like a war zone. The quietest I have ever seen New York City on the road. There was nobody on the road, just for first responders. And, my hypervigilance was kind of preventing a lot of emotional things going on, but I did feel emotions in a sense of, like, this seems like I'm in a movie. This can't be happening right now. I'm used to driving across the George Washington Bridge, seeing those twin towers, and all I could see was a plume of dust in the air and no towers. And I was just in total shock. And, driving down the West Side Highway, we hit the cloud of dust. And now you're literally, it's almost feels like it's nighttime when you're driving through this dust. We found a place to park and started to go into the site and look for a command post so we can start assisting in an organized manner. All the while, I just kept saying to myself, I can't believe this is actually happening. And I'm here. It just was very surreal. Once we got out of our vehicles and we started to go up upon that pile, and I looked up at it, I looked up and I was like, it was so intertwined and twisted and nasty, and fire and smoke and evidence all over the place. It was overwhelming. And I just remember telling my teammates, I'm like, it's going to take them a year to clean this up, to get those beams. I mean, I don't know this. I'd have to actually have to look up now how many stories high that pile was, but it was significant. You're literally looking up on it. We're trying to climb up at it. What was, risky is we would climb under it. That's where we knew that people would be, and that's where we felt we were going to rescue people. And skirting around fire and immediately itching from all the dust and debris. The one thing that really made me realize the significance of this was the jet fighters flying over. They kept flying over in circles, and it was loud. I mean, it was like an absolute war zone with jet fighters flying over, helicopters, which kind of amped you up more. And you realize, like, oh my goodness, like, this is on the homeland, and we need to be totally locked on for security of this site and also the rescue. We got to rescue now because the fire is getting worse in this pile. So we were moving and hustling. We worked 18 hours that first day. We didn't get off that pile until we, just couldn't physically go anymore. It's like, you had to take a break. And I remember climbing down through some beams, probably about 10 feet down. It was risky. And I was thinking to myself, I hope I don't slip or something breaks and I go down into this deep hole. And now I'm a rescue victim. But I remember being down there looking around, and there was a driver's license sitting perfectly on a beam like that. No dust on top of it, just dust around it. And it was a young female. And I picked it up, and it wasn't damaged or anything. And I looked at it, and I felt so much love for her, because the innocence of this really bothered me. These people were going to work every day, just great humans, making a living for their family. And they didn't ask for this. They got crushed and killed. So I looked at her, and I just was very protective over her. And I'm like, I'm going to find you, and you didn't deserve this. And I remember looking at her saying, I love you. And I never met her. And I said, I will never forget you. I couldn't keep the license. You had to turn the evidence in, but there were times where you felt attached to the victims, because you're hunting and trying to, find them. And you put your heart and soul into this, and you become attached, as a selfless person. It's real. It's real. And, that's to this day, the innocence of it all is what really bothers me the most. We didn't want to leave. When you're doing the job that you love and you're trained to do, and it's such a large terrorist attack, our bosses forced us to go back to the hotel. We were like, I want to go in that building. I'm going to sleep in a stairwell. That way I can start early in the morning. I don't want to drive the hotel. You get, hey, I was young, full of bravado, and I could do it all, and a lot of courage when you're young. And luckily I had a couple wise bosses that are like, hey, you can't perform tomorrow if you don't rest tonight. So we were there 18 hours. You can imagine we're pretty tired. And so we were, told, no, you're not going to sleep on a stairwell or anything like that. We're going to go back to a hotel. We went to a hotel, and unfortunately, it was such a quick response. We weren't able to bring multiple sets of uniforms. So it was nice to take a shower and get all that gook off of us, but it was still on our uniforms. And I wore that same non-wash uniform for 11 days straight. It was caked. And I had red spots in the center of my arm where it bends. It was getting irritated, the back of my knees, because it was hot. It was 80 degrees days in early September in New York City. Just your body got impregnated with all these chemicals and silica and all that. And we were all filled with rashes and all that, as much as, we showered and all that in the evening. The other thing that was bothersome was our eyes. The dust in your eyes and your nasal cavity was immense. So they were starting to hand out like eye drops to keep your eyes moist so they wouldn't get infected. Thank goodness they helped a lot, but still everybody's eyes down there were bloodshot. Lots of rashes and all that. I couldn't wait to get back on that pile the second day, and the rest of the team. We were very angry and emotional over this whole thing. And the unity that I was seeing amongst all the first responders and the civilians. The civilians were clapping when we walk on a pile, like you would see a football team coming out on a field. It was very special to see America come together without any divide. There was flags being put up. the patriotism was very noticeable, and it really helped motivate, keep the motivation going and motivate us. The first weekend I went home, or whatever days I was home, it wasn't necessarily a weekend, but it was nice it was kind of surreal. Like, I knew what was going on down at that pile, and for me to be quietly sitting at home, I felt like I was doing wrong. Like, I shouldn't be sitting here. I should still be down there, but we needed that. And all the first responders, firemen, everybody at EMS needed that as humans to take it all in emotionally and get rested so you can perform. So then we started to get on that cycle for several months, and you got used to being there and then going home and getting your workouts in and all the necessary things you had to do to maintain high level performance. We had 18 people on the team at the time. Everybody was kind of scattered around the state in special operations for response purposes. And one teammate of mine, his name was Ross Riley, also a paramedic, and I feel he's one of the best, tactical medics on the planet. And I remember him, being very giving and helping other first responders with any med issues. And also, I saw him running down the street. There were stampedes at the time. The first week, there was adjacent buildings that they didn't know if the collapse of the trade center caused damage to periphery buildings. So we were involved in probably 6 to 8 literal first responder stampedes that ran off the pile down Greenwich Street, south to Battery Park, thinking that buildings were going to collapse. And I remember Ross was watching CNN, and he spotted me and another teammate running in that stampede. He got the message like, I saw you guys on TV running. What the heck's going on? And finally got the message back that they honk a crane horn 3 times when they feel another periphery collapse is going to happen. And you want to talk about something you never thought that would ever happen to you as a first responder or a military guy is a building collapse. Like these high skyscrapers. That's pretty intimidating, because when you're running, you're trying to calculate the height of this thing. Can you run fast enough to not get yourself killed? And that's the first time I really saw fear come out in humans, like true fear. They reach condition red. I watched a NYPD officer try to turn around to the crowd and got run over like a steamroller. Literal bloodied up, ran over. And I was looking around, people were losing their minds. So luckily, we maintain our composure. We ended up setting up rally points. So when we lose communication, we knew where to meet at a certain street corner. And just wait for the other teammates when those things happen. But it didn't happen after the first week. They figured out there was no damage. That event is still killing people. It's killing first responders, and it's killing civilians that lived in that area every day. I have lost 20 colleagues at least. I mean, I don't know the exact number at this point. And cancers and lung diseases mainly. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. It happens. It just gets sprung upon you, years later. I mean, this started happening maybe 3 years after. Unfortunately, people were starting to die. And, at the time, I was young and I didn't really think deeply into this dust was going to bother us in our life. And here it's, the number one killer. And it certainly affected my life and my career. I have lost quite a few colleagues, and unfortunately, probably more will come. I hope not. But I actually have a colleague right now that just went into hospice for 9/11 cancer. And I'm kind of speechless over it. But ultimately, I ended up at year 15 in 2016 after 9/11 with a severe lung disease from 9/11. Two major surgeries. I lost a quarter of my right lung. Lost my career as a result of it, and had a couple tough years afterwards of trying to figure out who I was, how to be a civilian, how to adjust to being a civilian, and I still kind of fight with that and struggle with that 8 years after now. But one thing I figured out was the traditional medical world treatments weren't helping me. It was very limited. I was on like a steroidal inhaler and a pill, and that was it. And they didn't know how long I was going to live. And, basically they just treat and that's it, not come up with solutions. Although they're great docs, it's just the way they're trained. That's when I started my own investigation, being a person of fitness and health my whole life. And I started to do a deep dive investigation on how can I, heal this and turn this around naturally. And I started reaching out to a bunch of charities because I lost half my salary and, we were struggling financially. And I'm like, why not reach out to some charities? I'm the perfect candidate. They say they work. So I did. And I ran into a couple good ones, and Boot Campaign really helped me out with health and wellness, got me some of the best docs in the world, started to get me turned around. And then ultimately, Chive Charities helped out with some things. And ultimately, the last thing on the planet holistically, I haven't tried to reverse my lung disease was stem cells. And I heard about them, never really knew much about them. But I was like, now's the time to actually start looking into that. I did a deep dive investigation of that. And I was like, wow, I think this might work. So I ended up going to get my first stem cell treatment. And it was significant cost. So I had to raise funds through charities, very expensive. I was able to do that. Somehow, some way I was able to do it. You become your own entrepreneur when it's your life. And I started to see positive results a couple months after the stem cell treatment. And I've had 7 so far. And what I can tell you is it's one of the best healing, holistic healing things there is on the planet. There's virtually no side effects other than the only negative thing that's very expensive. And I'm proud to say that I am the first person to have reversed the lung disease from 9/11. And I feel great. I work out still. My head's great. I'm starting to adjust to society a lot better. And I enjoy passing this information along to anybody to guide them to actually look into healing and not treating. If you're a military member that was in a certain battle in a certain geographical area, there is a bond. And that's basically it. When you talk to somebody that's been on the pile through what you've been through, there is an immediate bond. And I run into people I never saw or knew there, but they were there, and you share stories. And so there is a camaraderie. If you delve into the 9/11 first responder community, you will actually see true selflessness and true, giving of themselves to save lives. That's the epitome of, raising your hand, the oath, and serving the public. I couldn't explain it any better. Just look at the actions on that pile and it explains it for itself. I want the younger generation to realize that there are countries and people out there that don't want us alive and want to kill us, and they are our enemy. And that is a reality. We have in this country put our head in the sand to that reality. When you go to a third world country where, these terrorist attacks were planned, you see the reality and the difference between Americans and those other countries and their citizens. So I want, everybody to realize that is the reality and not to brush it off, and to maintain vigilance and a firm Defense Department, a firm border, and firm national security, or this will happen again. This shouldn't have happened, but it did. And we should learn from it. And we shouldn't just assume that everybody loves us out there, because they don't. Face reality.